I'm joined by one of my good buddies, Jesse Johnson, with the Washington's Office of the State Treasurer. What was some of the biggest takeaways? What are you excited about from the people in this room? What conversations gave you hope and excitement?
Well, first of all, thanks for Asset Building Coalition for your visionary leadership. There was a lot of synergy in the room, and the things that really stood out to me is this idea of trauma-informed financial conversations, because when you talk about a lot of communities that are furthest from justice, communities that have came to this country through a diaspora, whether it be African-American communities, Latino, or tribal communities, there's a lot of trauma involved. And I think there has to be trust established and advocacy that's sustained. And so all of the groups here, it seems like, have already built a fabric in the community here in Whatcom County. And I think that's important first. Before we get into any of the nuts and bolts, you have to establish that trust and advocacy. So I'm really excited about that. And coming out of session, obviously, we just finished up. So I'm highly caffeinated from session still. Plus, I have 2 kids under 3, so that's another thing. But coming from session, this is what we look for: the energy and synergy in this room with those that are working on the ground with our communities that are economically marginalized, furthest from justice. And I think that's the thing that really excites me, is just seeing the work happen in person.
Does it work now? Nope. Okay, we're having ourselves a good old-fashioned tech challenge. I am so very excited, and you might have attended too many Fen things, but the fact that money is a touchy topic, and I want to echo your appreciation that of all of the people that I heard talk today, we were coming back to meeting people where they are, I think is what David said. Meeting people where they are in their journey, and finding what parts of their puzzle we can help solve. But y'all already heard that. So let's dive into some policies changes. Some policies. The base of the cake that we talked about this morning, the systems that we all work in that make our lives easier or harder as we go around about our day. That is a constantly changing tapestry here in Washington. We had a very busy session in Olympia this year. As someone who is a part of the Office of the State Treasurer, you had some bills going forward, but there was also a full legislature of people with big ideas. What were some of the things that happened down in Olympia this year that we should celebrate?
Well, I just want to give a little context. Everything that has been forecasted the last few years is happening right now. You know, we have the gap widening between the haves and have-nots. We have significant underachievement economically in our state from those that are furthest from justice, and disproportionately along lines of race, rural communities, so forth and so on. And I think when we entered this session, obviously from the federal election on down, there was a huge stress. You could feel it. It was palpable in Olympia this year if you were down at the Capitol. And folks are just saying to us every single day that groceries and gas are too high, housing is unaffordable, and childcare is too expensive. Those are the 3 common threads we heard. And since the treasurer came into office in 2021, we visited all 39 counties, including Whatcom County. And those are the 3 common threads, the red lines that we heard. And so when we go out into communities of the treasurer's office, obviously we're told something to do with money, right? So we can solve all things money. You have the bank. We actually have a vault in Olympia with no money in it, I should say. It hasn't been used since the 1800s, but it's a cool Harry Potter looking vault. But we came into session knowing that these are the questions that had to be answered. And it was pivotal that folks are provided vital services that continue. Also having a $16 billion budget shortfall. So that's how we entered session. Stress from national, statewide underachievement economically, and past budget forecasts that led to where we are now. And so the things that our office said was, number one, we have to protect and preserve our pensions, because that's the number one thing that folks work their entire lives that has to be protected. We did that in Olympia this year. Pensions are untouched. Number two, yes, that deserves some hand clap, because we now are the second best, only behind one state, funded pension system in the country, behind Connecticut, I should say. So we're almost there. Number two, we needed to maintain our BSA, budget stabilization account, or rainy day fund, so that we had pre-pandemic levels. Because when the pandemic happened, our government, including every other state government, went down to literally nothing and actually in debt from spending because we had to, because we were in a pandemic. And we needed to return our BSA to pre-pandemic levels, which we did. So that's number two. And finally, number three, we needed to have a manageable debt service ratio. So our state wasn't in too much debt. All three of these things were accomplished because of our advocacy in the treasurer's office. Because it's very hard, I should say, as a former legislator, to tell a legislator, you can't spend money, you need to maintain pensions and reserves, and you need to make a manageable debt service ratio. That's not something you go out into communities and gets applause at a town hall, like there's no applause now. But the cool thing is, by doing these three things, our state can now help local communities like here in Bellingham with local projects, because Bellingham and other cities in our state can use our state's good credit because we've maintained these three things to provide roads, bridges, ferries. And so those three things were accomplished this year. Now let's get to the negative stuff, because I think that's why we are here right now, is because that $16 billion shortfall, we had to initiate new taxes. And I should say the legislators. So legislators, I'm a former legislator, so I can throw them under the bus. I know they'll probably call me about that. But we did have some taxes this year that I personally think were needed, but are also concerning. You think about, capital gains that increased this year. You think about estate taxes that increased. Also 6% tax on gas that's going to increase July 1st. So these things are things that are probably needed, but are going to help maintain services in our state that we need for communities like in Whatcom County, but are still concerning because folks' gas is going to increase, and so estate taxes are going to increase. But I do think that when you look at programs this year that are exciting, we did last year, one of the things our office initiated was Washington Saves, which is a first-time auto IRA account for folks that don't have retirement, which is 4 million folks in Washington do not have retirement currently. 1 in 3 millennials and actually 2 out of every 3 Gen Zers do not have $0 in retirement in our state. Because of the Washington Saves program, they can now get initiated a savings account through their job, which will cost them nothing to start. And folks can help, get that started in our state. We have a implementation team that's currently undergoing that process. But this year, our 2 big things outside of the things I mentioned were baby bonds, which is a program. If folks don't know about baby bonds, Google TED Talk, Dr. Derek Hamilton, who's the founder of Baby Bonds. Baby Bonds is where folks that are born into poverty, so in our state, it's Apple Health or our state's Medicaid system, would get a trust account set aside when they're born so that when they're 18 years old, they can pull out funds for higher education, including trades and apprenticeships, to start a small business or property ownership. And so this account would, in our state with Washington Future Fund, would have $4,000 started for that trust account. Unfortunately, the baby bonds bill did not move forward. It got to the fiscal committee once again for the 3rd year in a row and stalled out. But the energy behind baby bonds, I would say, and I know, Brian, you were part of those conversations, will continue to increase, and we'll bring it back next year. The last bill is financial education in high school. So actually, I was just working with my colleague, Ava, here in Bellingham. It's not required to have financial education, but they do have personal finance courses, standalone courses, and incorporated into math that can be used towards graduation. What we would like to do is finally make it a prerequisite for graduation to have financial education in our schools. We're one of 22 states, thank you, 22 states in the country that does not require financial education. And when you look at it, we're in the bottom 5 in FAFSA applications. We're in the bottom 5 in young people in debt in our country. We need to figure this out. And I think this will go a long ways before these young people are signing promissory notes for $20,000 loans and going to college. They have financial education in their high school. So currently only 49% of our kids get that financial education. So we want to make this a prerequisite. And through the work of our office and working with the State Board of Ed, they're actually considering financial education through the reorg of the graduation requirements currently undergoing right now with the State Board of Ed. Our bill didn't pass. pass for a lot of reasons, but and I will say, not to any fault of teachers, because teachers have a lot on them already. I'm a former teacher, so I know, but we need to get this in our schools. And so the State Board of Education has made it a promise to incorporate this in their profile of a graduate while they're reorging our new credits for graduation by 2029. And then the final thing I'll say is, I think when you look at the vital services that are not being provided with financial education, it all comes back to the trauma-informed care that can only happen, again, from the work that you all do. And so the more public-private partnerships that can be formed through Asset Building Coalition, hopefully working with other groups like banks and credit unions out in Eastern Washington, GISA Credit Union does an incredible job at providing that financial education on the ground. We have to continue that work and fund that work. So that's something I'm excited to work with going forward from our office.
Awesome. Give him a round of applause. That deserves a round of applause. You covered a lot of ground and admittedly answered a lot of questions I was going to ask. One of the things that Fenn keeps a policy advocacy page that I can probably say a little bit more about grassroots organizing than the Office of the State Treasurer. But maybe putting on your hat as a former representative, there are a lot of bills. For folks who don't know, Washington State has a biennium, so bills that did not pass this last legislative cycle will likely start exactly where they left off in 2026. As we look forward to 2026, are there anything that excites you, and any pieces of advice that you would give to talking to your legislators about, or your legislators about connecting what we're learning in this room to how policy changes?
Well, I'm excited every day about the fact that we have folks like people in this room doing the work. But one of the things that I think we really need to pay attention to is the affordability or lack thereof in our state. Once again, it's just too dang unaffordable to live in Washington State, even here in Whatcom County. And people are getting pushed out. And so when I look ahead, I think one of the things that passed this year that I'm excited to continue to move forward is rent stabilization, which finally there will not be increased costs to rent for the first time in a while. But we need to continue that into home ownership. And so last year, the Covenant Home Ownership Account, or CHA, was passed, which folks that can prove that their families were historically victims of housing discrimination can get access to 0% loans to finally buy homes in their communities. So CHA, there was a trailer bill this year, 1696, that passed that will expand that. So you can, you don't have to, it's not as stringent to prove that you were, having this disproportionality to your family in the past. So that's going to make it easier for folks to get access to those 0% loans to finally buy homes. Now, the problem is where the home is going to be. So we have $100 million that's in the budget that was just signed half hour ago by Governor Ferguson. Ava was just telling me it was just signed, but that capital includes $100 million to build new homes across the state. We need programs like baby bonds because, as we all know, folks that own homes, it is extremely hard to get the down payment. So even with the 0% loan, like down payment, the monthly mortgage, and so baby bonds would have those funds for folks that are born into poverty to be able to use on top of the CHA program. So we need those to both kind of work together. So baby bonds is something I'm always going to advocate for. Connecticut's the only state in the country to pass it, and they are seeing the dividends being paid off already. And then the last thing I'll say is more, I think the Bank On, for example, like how do we increase access to banking and make it so that it is a little bit more culturally relevant? And so, whether it's more financial education courses, I don't know what that would look like. But I think we need to increase that access to banking and make it so that it's more incentivized to bank and not become, a victim of predatory lending or the things that we know are happening in our state when you're not banked.
Awesome. Thank you. For my last question, and I'm keeping an eye on the time. I know that we are the last thing between y'all and getting on the road, so forgive me. I really want to read the budget. I want to know what changed, so that's on my brain right now. As we are coming into the period where a lot of the bills that were just signed come into effect, and are working over the summer to convince our legislators to keep us in mind when writing policy. What is the Office of the State Treasurer doing on a day-to-day basis? Where can people plug into the work that you're doing? If there were a spot that you wanted to updraft more, maybe John McKinney.
Absolutely. So we do have, I supervise our financial education program. So we have a full-time coordinator, John McKinney, who goes out and he does workshops weekly through WorkSource. So he onboards new state employees, but also we work in the school districts. We work with organizations in the community like Mujer al Volante, which just got a state leadership award, but they service immigrant and refugee women that are trying to get a first-time driver's license. And he goes out and does financial education for them, because often we see when you don't have transportation, it often affects your ability to get to a bank or a credit union. So he goes into the apartment complexes, into the community to do that work. But you can access our website and see some of the different programs that we have, but also we're willing to partner. We're all about partnerships. My card's in the back. Feel free to grab one. We actually are going to be doing a town hall on August 12th in Everett. This is going to be a financial education town hall in partnership with the FEP, Financial Education Public-Private Partnership, where we're inviting community, school district personnel, folks to talk about where are the gaps, what are we missing in terms of financial education, K-12 and higher ed and beyond. So August 12th in Everett, so there'll be information about that.
Awesome. I think we have still a few minutes. Thank you. We have 5 minutes left. I just want to center a couple of last minute thoughts from both of us, but primarily I think I can say this because I'm not a government employee. As we are thinking through solutions to the problems that we face every day, there is the road of financial empowerment looks different for everybody, and still there are things that we can do as communities to come together to work towards a shared vision of the future. In a 30-second version, why are you excited about tomorrow?
Gosh, this feels like school again. This is the type of questions I would ask students. I'm excited because of our young people. Honestly, when you go out into the schools, and I still do periodically, young people are actively organizing and moving, and they're forcing adults to kind of get it together, including folks in Olympia, to move policy that represents folks furthest from justice. So I'm excited because of the hope of our young people, and even, having kids myself now, like that's the future. We have to make it a better world for the next generation. And so that's what drives me every day working in our office. And I know that's what drives the treasurer. He is somebody that often meets with young people, and he makes it a priority to talk with them, and they have a lot of ideas. So if anything, talk to your young people, because that's where our ideas come from. That's where some of the best policies come from, frankly.
Don't believe a no, because we just haven't figured it out yet. Yeah. Awesome. I think that we have closing words from Edith, but I want to give one more big round of applause. Thank you so much, Jesse Johnson. If you're looking for opportunities to engage, we didn't prep this. I like our treasurer. He's good at engaging with community, and he picks good staff too. So please reach out. I have always appreciated the fact that y'all are an email away, and it's super easy to get a hold of the Office of the Treasurer. and there is absolutely no bad question. We just don't have all of the. Just because a question doesn't have an immediate answer doesn't mean that it's a bad question. The resources, the ideas that we get from folks who are well versed in the system and who are new to the system are invaluable in making tomorrow what we want it to be.